Welcome to Written Voices. I'm Alan Hunkin, your host. Glad that you could join us today. The book is called Work Like You're Showing Off, The Joy, Jazz, and Kick of Being Better Tomorrow Than You Were Today. Joe Calloway is with us. Let me tell you a little bit about Joe. If you don't already know, he's an expert in high-performance organizations and individuals. He's the owner of an award-winning restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee, a member of the International Speakers Hall of Fame. His clients read like who's who of business, from newspapers in Sweden, hotels in Great Britain, and computer companies in South Africa to world brands like BMW and IBM. I can only imagine how many air miles he has. He's also the author of Indispensable and Becoming a Category of One, and he joins us today from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
You like to show off, I understand.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing. I've been, as you said, I've got way too many airline miles, and that comes from about 26 years of working with all kinds of companies. And my approach is pretty much to look at top performers and see what they all have in common. And it's interesting, top performers are all show-offs, but not in the way you might think. You say showing off, Alan, and people say, well, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing, because that means you're being a braggart and you're being pretentious and you're calling attention to yourself. But the way I use the term showing off is quite simply, it just means that you bring the best you are and the best you have to any situation. So showing off, I mean in the most thoroughly positive sense imaginable.
I love the beginning of the book. It's a quote that I use often. In fact, I used to use it in my SIG file in emails. It says, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough.
Yeah, isn't that a great quote?
It's a great quote. And it's interesting because I've been in and around motivation and inspiration and learning how to get the best out of myself for a long, long time. Zig Ziglar and I spent time way back in 1973, so that tells you how long I've been around.
Yeah.
And yet, the other day I was having a birthday party, and someone said, how are you doing? And I said, well, if you want to know the truth, I'm a little bit bored. And the person said, well, yeah, and you've been in psychology for 35 years. You know what that means. And I said, well, no, remind me. Well, it means if you're bored, it must mean you're also boring. And so I said, wait a minute, this is not the way to do life. So I jumped into the choir, and I joined the choir. I joined a dance class, and I'm going to learn how to play the guitar.
Fantastic.
Life's about showing up, isn't it?
Well, and it's interesting because there's a chapter in the book where I talk about being in exactly the same space that you were in, because I talk about a time really not that long ago when, and as I say in the book, I was doing work that had become a little too easy for me, and I wasn't being challenged creatively. And to me, that's like dying a slow death. In the book, I say I wasn't taking enough chances, and the price you pay for that is boredom. And I've always said, Alan, listen, I'd rather be scared than bored. And so part of my process was in saying, I want to rethink everything I'm doing and bump it all up a notch. Because it's funny, I had stopped showing off. I was doing stuff, as I just said, that came a little too easy for me. And so I shook myself up, and a lot of mine was in career. And I took on some things that were a stretch for me, and that were a little bit scary, and that were a little bit risky. And, oh, man, it jazzed everything up. But it's easy. I'm telling you, it's easy. A phrase that I use, Alan, I ask people if they think they might be stuck doing something they're good at. And it's amazing how many people nod their heads and say, I think I am. I'm really good at what I do, but I'm stuck at it. You can get in a rut. And as the old saying goes, a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out.
Chapter 3, All Hat and No Cattle. Something that's concerning me, Joe, about our society, as far as I can tell, being able to quarterback on Monday morning how the play should have been made, whether it's a football game or a hockey game or a business move or a governmental challenge is not the same as actually being able to do it. And I'm finding that because our media is so pervasive and we get to watch people doing great things, like a great example, maybe a better example would be Dancing with the Stars, just finished up here for the season. Now, watching people make real progress is not the same as making progress yourself.
Exactly.
Talk to us about that.
Well, here's the thing. The whole point of the all hat and no cattle is show me something. You know, I even referenced the movie Jerry Maguire, and that great line in that movie was, show me the money. I tell you, there's a documentary called Comedian that Jerry Seinfeld made. He said after he shut down his show, the phenomenally successful Seinfeld TV show, he went back out doing live comedy again, and he said, when I walk on stage, an audience will give me 4 or 5 minutes grace because I'm Jerry Seinfeld and I had my great show and they're all excited about seeing me. He said, but that's it. And after that first 4 or 5 minutes, if I'm not funny, I'm no different than any other unfunny comedian. And so, yeah, I think you're right. There are a lot of people that talk a great game. And part of the point of the book is, what are you willing to do that the other guy's not willing to do? Why should I recommend you instead of your competitor? Why should I hire you instead of the other guy? Why should you get the promotion instead of the woman in the office down the hall? And ultimately, it all comes down to the results that you can produce. And talking a good game doesn't count for a whole lot in the real world.
One of the ones that just knocks me out of the buggy, Joe, is watching these young guys that are doing the DJing, where they've got a mixing table and they've got 2 records, and they're mixing them together, and everybody's applauding like they actually did something.
Well, it's interesting. The person that can come up with an original idea, or the person that can actually do the job instead of pick up and carry somebody else's water bucket, that's a rare person. And that's somebody that I classify as a show-off. And I tell you what, let me go back and clarify again. When I say show-off, that doesn't mean being loud. The show-off, the true show-off, may be the quietest person in the whole room. But they're the ones that if you give them something to do, you can walk away and you don't have to give it another thought because you know it'll be done. It's like pulling the trigger on a starter's gun, that you just point them at something and it's done. And I tell you what, in today's world, if you can deliver that, if you can deliver on the idea that you can count on me, if I tell you I'll do something, you can put it in the bank. That is strong stuff. That knocks everybody out of the buggy when you can do that. That whole consistency of performance thing, powerful stuff.
The book gets serious real fast. Right after all hat and no cattle, it goes into something that is really important, probably one of life's most important lessons, let it go.
Oh, man. You could do a whole book on that. That's a huge idea.
Tell us what that means to you.
Well, I think for most people, we tend to think so much in our society of, here's what I want. I want to make a lot of money, or I want to get a promotion, or I want to be happy, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And we think in terms of what we want to get. But for a lot of people, I don't know, Alan, maybe it's even for most people, the first step is you need to turn around and look at the other direction, look at what you've already got in your life and say, wait a minute, what do I need to let go of? Because for most people, until you let go of what's holding you back or what's limiting you or what's getting in your way or causing you pain, until you let go of some stuff, you can't create the room for the good stuff to come in. I really believe that in order to reach out and grab what you want, you've got to unclench your fist and let go of whatever you're holding on to that could be holding you back. And that could be anything. It could be that you need to let go of, hey, maybe you just need to let go of whining. Maybe you need to let go of being a victim. Maybe you need to let go of certain people in your life. Maybe you need to let go of where you live, move somewhere else. Or, it could be that you need to let go of thinking you do need to live somewhere else and say, I can do whatever I want to do right here. It's interesting. I use the example in the book. It could be that, for example, you might be the kind of person that's always making plans but never following through. And that what you need to let go of is being so totally obsessed with setting goals and pick a lane for Pete's sake and do something, even if it's just one thing. I, on the other hand, might be the sort of person that I'm so busy starting projects and doing things that I never carry through on any one all the way to fruition. And so for you, you may need to let go of being lazy and get busy. On the other hand, I may need to let go of being so busy and go lay down and think about my life for a while. But I tell you what, I think almost everybody has something in their life that they need to let go of. And all you need to do is say that, and 9 out of 10 people will know exactly what it is. We know what we need to let go of. The trick is having the courage to do it. We get real dependent on our limitations because they can be our get-out-of-jail-free card. It's like, well, I could be more successful, but I've got this holding me back. Well, let go of that excuse and see what happens.
Didn't ask you at the beginning of the interview, something that I ask often. What was the purpose for your writing this book?
You know what? I've had 2 business books published. You mentioned them in the introduction. Becoming a Category 1 was the first one, and then Indispensable was the second one. They're about the business, what makes for a successful organization, a successful company. And the books were read by a ton of people. They were really popular with managers and people that own small businesses, well, and executives too, for that matter. This book, Work Like You're Showing Off, is way more personal. And there were some things that I had in me as far as ideas and observations that I'd made, not necessarily about businesses, but about people and what works. And I wanted to write a very, very personal book that people would read and say, holy cow, this is about me. And so that was really the motivation. I tell you the other thing, and it goes back to being bored. I wanted to write a book that was fun. And I had more fun writing this book than anything I've ever written.
One final question. What is your wish for the readers of this book?
My wish is that when somebody reads this book, they'll put it down, and the next day they will live their life differently. And that might be something big. It might be 2 or 3 small things. But I tell you, my intention, Alan, was to kind of get in people's faces a little bit with this book and have them, when they read it, one of the fun things about this book is you don't have to read it start to finish. You can open it to any place in the book, and each chapter is standalone. You can just read that one chapter, and you don't have to read what went before it, and you don't have to read what comes after it. But my hope is that when people read this book, it makes a difference in the quality of their life, and that it prompts them and motivates them to make whatever change they need to make to take their life to however they define as being the next level.
Well said, my friend. Let's point people to your website. It's joecalloway.com, CALLOWAY.
Correct.
.com. Want to make sure of that. People can learn more about you, pick up a copy of this book and the other books. So just tremendous, Joe. I'd like to thank you for writing the book and for being on the program today.
Thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure.
This is Alan Hunkin for Written Voices, reminding you that you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. Bye for now.